After a somewhat promising start, the second half of Essendon's 2025 fell apart, crippled with injury. But it didn't end there. The captain and now six-time best and fairest winner Zach Merrett's failed bid to leave the Bombers has been perhaps the biggest story of the off-season. So how has the club received his return? Plenty to discuss with the Bombers coach Brad Scott ahead of the 2026 season. Brad, thank you for your time. How's your summer been? Do you get a chance to unwind and relax? Yeah, usually. I mean, it rolls around pretty quickly these days in terms of reviewing the season and planning. And we had very strong draft hands, so I was heavily involved, probably more so than usual in the draft preparations, given our draft hands. So we didn't have the year we wanted last year, so it didn't really feel like much of an off-season. It felt like we were pretty keen to roll on and get prepared for this year. And part of that reviewing obviously would have been the high performance area, which you've made some really significant changes in. Can you talk us through what will be different, what has been different over the summer, and how you look to correct that? Yeah, we had probably a perfect storm last year in terms of injuries. We had some injuries we would have preferred not to have had that we would regard as preventable, but we also had some freak injuries. Harrison Jones's freak ankle. When you have 4 ACLs in 1 year, Jai Caldwell had a syndesmosis ankle injury in a tackle. So we had a lot of things that were probably you put in the not preventable basket that were certainly preventable. And this year our injuries at the moment are really only the ones that are long-term from last year. So pretty much our availability's 95% based on who was available at the start of this pre-season. So we're carrying that lag from last year in terms of some long-term injuries, but Matt Ennis and his team have done a terrific job in the pre-season in terms of getting full pre-seasons into the majority of our list. And we've had more players on the training track through pre-season than we had at any stage last year. So that's a good start. So what's been his fundamental philosophy in terms of changing things up? I mean, it's fairly holistic in terms of all the things that go into the training program. And I think Matt's done a terrific job, but it's certainly not to say that we've completely reinvented the wheel in that space. But we certainly have changed our training design in terms of we're still training a long time in terms of duration, but really looking to match or exceed the speeds that the game demands. And that's been a real challenge for us in the past because we've had a lot of players who have been interrupted, and when they have trained, they haven't been able to train at full speed and full intensity. So this year a lot of players, Darcy Parish is a good example, who has had the continuity of training, and we've been able to get the high speed running into him that we've been chasing. So Matt's done a terrific job, but that's not to say that everything that happened last year was all anyone's fault. It was just a whole confluence of factors coming together at the same time. So pre-season's always a really exciting time and everyone's optimistic and everyone is hopeful and confident. What should Bombers fans be feeling on the eve of the season as you head in? Yeah, I think they should be really excited and optimistic about the players they know, looking for improvement from them. So we expect all of our players to improve. Whether that's Andy McGrath and our leadership group, all of those players I would expect are thinking that their best football's in front of them. And then it's our players who have really jumped up and improved, players like Sam Durham. And then it's probably the players that we know have got great capability but we haven't seen much of over the last few years. Talking Jordan Ridley, Zach Reid, I mentioned Darcy Parish, a lot of guys that have had really good, preparations and pre-seasons, and we'd just like to see them get out and play. And then obviously the optimism around our draftees. We're very excited about the 5 draftees that we brought into the club. They've all really impressed through the pre-season. Sullivan Roby has been a little bit interrupted with a back injury that he came in with, but we think all of our draftees are capable of playing significant amounts of football in 2026. So if you're an Essendon supporter, I'd be getting excited about all of our players improving, and if we do that from the senior players right through to the draftees, that will make us a better team over time. Not to heap pressure on these young draftees, and they are obviously coming from the higher end of the draft, but that has been a problem in the past few years, that some of the higher draftees haven't quite played the games or perhaps had the performances that some people were expecting. Yeah, I think there's really good examples of this over time. I mean, if you look at expansion clubs are a great case study. You can give an expansion club all the draft capital in the world, but when you're a really young team, sometimes it's hard for that young
talent and top-end talent to develop. And the best model is to have high-end, top-end talent come into an already experienced, successful team. And so it has been a real challenge for us on a whole range of levels in terms of getting the team functioning with full availability, getting our good players playing really well, and that aids in the development of your young players. So, like a lot of teams, we're very reliant on our senior players, and last year we didn't have a lot of them available, but we're quite optimistic about the core group of players that we've got, and we think they'll play a really vital role in helping our young players develop.
The story surrounding Zach Merrett at the end of last year, were you surprised when he came to you and told you about his plans to try to get to Hawthorn?
I think at the time, I wasn't concerned about it at all. Zach's an intense competitor who's, single-minded in his approach to his own performance and wants nothing more than team success on the back of, hopefully his really good performance. But, my attitude was he contracted for 2 years, so I just let list management do their job, and as far as I was concerned, he was never leaving. So it wasn't a concern for me until it became a concern. But even then, the club we made our position really clear, and we didn't waver from that. So, while it created a bit of turmoil in the off-season, Zach was always contracted. He was a required player, and, he's come back and performed in the pre-season exactly as we expected him to. So we've clearly talked a lot through that period and certainly post. And Zach, I just see him being, as committed as I've ever seen him. So, he's looking forward to a career best year, and based on his preparation, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
So in the fallout, you've been pretty strong about how you've navigated your relationship with him, but I wonder whether it's damaged his relationship with any of his cohort and the teammates and the blokes that he's in the trenches with. Has he had to do a little bit of repair work there?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. Because it's a question on everyone's mind. How will it be? And I think even Zach, initially was, how are my teammates going to cope with this, and how am I going to cope with it?
As the coach, so how you're handling it and your experiences in football may be very different to how his teammates are handling it.
Yeah, and I think any time there's you don't want to air your dirty laundry in public. So it's been a challenge for us in terms of, talking about the story publicly, because, we want to deal with things in-house. But I think internally, we didn't want a void of information. So, we've had long discussions with Zach, our leadership group, our coaching group, so that all the information's on the table. And it's fair to say, and I won't go into detail, but we have a much, much better understanding of Zach's mindset at the end of the year. The key thing is that he's fully invested and wants to move forward, and his preparation's been fantastic, and I understand the interest in the whole episode, but we're just looking forward from now on.
Do you feel like you've got all of this season to inspire that level of confidence back in him, so we're not back where we were in October?
Well, I have a very strong philosophy on this. My job is to really work hard on the environment with the senior players. The senior players are really strong in trying to build a culture that they can be proud of, and then they go to work on protecting that culture. And I think if we do a really good job of that, all of those things take care of themselves.
Andy McGrath is a really impressive young man, and I've got no doubt he'd be a terrific leader. What has he done within the group that is making you feel as if he's got this under control?
Well, he's been a captain in waiting for a while. I really like the concept. We had Dyson Heppel do a fantastic job for a long period of time. Zach was the logical next captain after Dyson, and Andy was the next logical captain after Zach. So, he's observed, he's watched some really good players and really good professionals, prepare themselves and lead the club. But Andy is a unique individual, and captaincy and leadership is really difficult. It's in a lot of ways it's easier just to play well. The real challenge, and Zach did this to a really high level, is to lead and perform at the same time, because quite often there's a bit of push-pull there. How do you invest in the team and try and do the right thing by the team while also performing at a really high individual level? Andy's someone who, and this is rare, the selflessness and the team first and the investing in the club and the culture comes seemingly very naturally to him. He's a person that we joke that we're still trying to work out what's wrong with him, because he's Mr. Perfect in a lot of ways, but he's just got that He's got a fantastic blend of being one of the boys at the right time, being the thorough professional at the right time. He's just someone who you think, gee, we're really fortunate to have him leading our club and representing our club.
So some of the youngsters that will emerge, hopefully, this season, Nate Caddy, where can he get his football to?
Well, you have to remind yourself that he's only played a couple of seasons in the AFL, and he's already a really important part of our forward line. He's just such a unique player, so dynamic, a great mix of speed and endurance and athleticism. The short answer is the sky's the limit, but he would be the first to say he's got so much improvement and he's got to learn certain aspects of the game. A lot of the great things he does at the moment is just on sheer talent and ability. So, we struggled last year to get some continuity through availability, so I think being able to play with our senior forwards on a more regular basis will make him a much better player, and that's where his focus needs to be on fitting into a forward system rather than just being the individual, which he's such a talent that that's tempting just to put him in the forward line and let him do his thing, but we'll work on getting him to work in with the other forwards.
Isaac Kako, how do you use him in season 2026?
Well, everywhere we hold him in high regard as well. Probably through a little bit of necessity at the end of last year, we played him in the midfield as well. But I think he's got the capability to be one of the best small forwards in the competition. But where we use him, whether that's forward and mid, will probably be an even mix of both.
Wild card round, are you a fan?
Well, it remains to be seen if we
need it.
If you finish in the top 8 and get knocked out in the wild card round, then I'm not a fan. But I'm sure any club that finishes 10th will be a huge fan. So, yeah, it's an interesting concept. I don't have a solid, strong opinion. I think, like all coaches, I think it depends how it affects your team, is your view. But if I try and take a step back and look at, the competition, it probably is something that adds intrigue and interest in the game.
Rule changes, what ones do you like, what ones don't you like, what are going to have a big impact?
Well, it's only my opinion, and everyone's got an opinion. We'll see how it plays out. But I like the concept of the last disposal out of bounds between the arcs. It's sort of in at the moment anyway. I mean, in terms of, when the ball's kicked anywhere near the boundary line, it's insufficient intent. So I like the fact that it takes another hard decision that umpires have got to make out of the game. It's just simple. It's black and white. And, hopefully it'll keep the ball in play a little bit longer. Statistically, we're looking at maybe 3 less boundary throw-ins per game. So inconsequential, really, in terms of affecting stoppages and rucks. But, I always think about it, what do the fans think watching the game? It's black and white. If it's last disposal, it's a free kick to the opposition. So I think that rule makes sense. I know there'll be a lot of people who don't like it, but I think that makes sense. I love the change to the centre bounce ruck rule. I think that we've got some elite ruckmen in the competition. One of the all-time greats in Gawn, Jared Witts on the Gold Coast, Darcy, Luke Jackson. There are some great ruckmen in the competition, right at the moment. But not since Nick Nat-Nui have we had a leaping ruckman at the centre bounce. So I was concerned that was a bit of a dying art and going out of the game. So hopefully we see we should see the ruckman. I mean, that's the rule. So we should see the ruckman jumping at centre bounce, which I think is a key feature of our game. I'm
sure coming into the year you're not publicly stating, where you can get to, but in terms of a general feel of how much improvement is within this group, I mean, the finals records and all that, they're almost irrelevant for where this group sits at the moment, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we're just. It sounds boring, but we're just focused on improvement. We're not in a position where we can, even be, and nor should we at any stage be thinking about making big statements about what we can do. We need to stack good decision upon good decision. We need to make incremental improvements in all parts of our game, and over time that'll add up to something that we can be proud of. But the reality is we've got a lot of work to do, and our focus is just on that, getting better each day, and the compounding effect of that will be what it'll be over time. But I quite like the fact that we've got a lot of work to do. Everyone at the club understands that. There's a lot of times there can be unrealistic expectations or bold statements made, and we want to be bold as a football club, but we want to be bold on the back of hard work and executing small things incrementally over time, and they'll compound into big things.
Beauty. Brad Scott, have a brilliant year at the Bombers.
Great. Thanks a lot, Sarah.